Welcome to the Holotropic Psychedelic Integration Podcast, Episode 4. I'm Art Granoff.
And I'm James Moran.
Today, we feature planetary archetypes, Neptune and Saturn. We'll hear Richard Tarnas talk about them, and then James and I will discuss.
So you may have noticed a kind of a sequence we've been building up to really digging into archetypal astrology. We originally talked about the expanded cartography of Grof, and this is what historically preceded the founding of archetypal astrology. We talked about Grof's discovery of the basic perinatal matrices, and then we talked about the discovery of how the outer planets, transpersonal planets, symbolically align are resonant with the basic perinatal matrices discovered by Grof. So if this all sounds unfamiliar to you, go back and watch those episodes. It's very fascinating indeed. This is a major discovery in the exploration of human consciousness. You know, it puts Grof and Tarnas solidly in a kind of a sequence that goes all the way from Plato through to Jung, Grof, Tarnas. It's real fascinating stuff. So today we're going to get into more of the nitty-gritty, more of the details, more granular look at specific planetary archetypes, Neptune and Saturn.
So here we go, listening to about Neptune.
Okay, so what we're going to listen to now is actually an excerpt from Way of the Psychonaut, and it's written by Richard Tarnas, but we're going to hear it read in the voice of his daughter, Becca Tarnas.
Finally, a similar set of parallels was apparent in examining the coincidence of the very different range of BPM-1 experiences with transits of Neptune. The first perinatal matrix is associated with the prenatal condition immediately prior to the beginning of the birth process. Experiences of the amniotic universe, floating oceanic sensations, the melting of boundaries, a porous relationship to the environment, lack of differentiation between inner and outer, embryonic experiences multidimensionally blended with aquatic, interstellar, galactic, and cosmic experiences. Here also are found experiences of mystical unity, spiritual transcendence, the dissolution of material reality and of the separative ego, a sense of merging with the womb, with the mother, with other persons or beings, with all life, with the divine, access to other ontological dimensions beyond consensus reality, transcendence of time and space. Experiences of idyllic nature, such as tropical islands or childhood play in beautiful meadows or on seashores, can merge into experiences of cosmic unity, oceanic ecstasy, and images of paradise. In its negative aspect, BPM-1 is associated with experiences that involve a disorienting loss of boundaries, the dissolving of a stable identity or reality structure, susceptibility to delusional thinking, feeling enveloped by a threatening atmosphere filled with invisible dangers and subtly infecting influences, and experiences of a toxic womb merging into experiences of drug poisoning, psychic contamination, or oceanic pollution. Remarkably, astrologers symbolically associate the planet Neptune with experiences having a spiritual, transcendent, or mystical character. With the subtle and intangible, the unitive, timeless, immaterial, and infinite. All that transcends the limited world of matter, time, and concretely empirical reality. Neptune is connected with states of psychological fusion, physical and psychological permeability, and the longing for the beyond. It has a symbolic association with water, the sea, streams and rivers, mist and fog, with liquidity and dissolution of any kind, and with what Freud termed the oceanic feeling. Negatively, it is seen in tendencies toward illusion and delusion, Maya, deception and self-deception, disorganization, escapism, intoxication, addiction, perceptual and cognitive distortions, projection, inability to distinguish the inner world from the outer, and vulnerability to toxic drug reactions, infections, and contamination.
Yeah, so that was a great reading there by Becca Tarnas of the words of Richard Tarnas, his observation, him and Stan observing these qualities of the human psyche as revealed by not just psychedelic-assisted healing, but also by the astrological perspective. So the pairing of these two approaches cannot, in my mind, be understated in its importance, because it's through the psychedelic-assisted healing that we can actually work through perinatal material that would be otherwise through a more of like a Freudian framework, which the Freudian framework pretty much begins in infancy and goes up to the present moment in our life. It doesn't account for any of the perinatal material. So in a Freudian framework, it would be quite confusing. Why would we be having these kind of delusional experiences of subtly infecting influences, feeling that there's kind of like an array of looming toxic qualities that are permeating our system, and actually we have the perinatal realm. We can understand, we can see where this comes from, and we can begin to understand why it would be there. This is a foundational layer of the psyche that has this Neptunian influence. So the psychedelic assisted healing approach allows us to process unprocessed material, perinatal material, which is so important, because otherwise we can be really really kind of haunted, tormented by these experiences. In my clients, I've seen a number of times experiences where there's that unprocessed material, and it shows up as feeling that feeling that food is contaminated, feeling that water is contaminated, feeling that some objects are contaminated, even though rationally the person knows that they're not contaminated. They know that they're not, but there's this deeper layer of the psyche that's being influenced by this perinatal material. So again, the psychedelic assisted healing offers an opportunity to process, and also opportunities to experience the other side of Neptune, positive side of Neptune, which is connecting with a kind of underlying unitive principle that connects all things and exists in all things, but yet is transcendent to all things, is captured, exists in all forms, but is limited by no form. And so that's something that the human being actually thirsts for. It's a need, it's a basic fundamental need to feel that sense of connection. And it's a lot of why our society kind of trundles along in a little bit more dysfunctional ways, engaging in kind of ego dissolving or boundary dissolving drugs, intoxicants, or escapist practices or something like that, because there's actually a thirst there. There's genuine thirst for that sense of spiritual transcendence, which is a reality, a subtle one, that these experiences of psychedelic assisting help us to access. And then the astrological perspective helps us to understand. It helps us to understand specifically, personally, in terms of ourselves, what is happening. It helps us look at timing. We can understand transits of Neptune and why these experiences are more strong at different times. It also helps us understand our birth chart, which is reflective of our own personal birth process, and why maybe this Neptune influence, for example, or any archetypal influence, is more present in us exactly how it shows up, when it shows up, where it shows up, why it shows up. It's like a map. The astrological is an archetypal symbolic map that really helps us grasp our inner workings. It's as if we're able to look at a chart and we're looking beneath the hood of the psyche and we're really understanding how it works. So we get that understanding, we get that map, and then we have the experience through psychedelic assisted healing.
I want to say that I would always enjoy psychedelics for the relaxing, unitive, peaceful, beyond words experience that I would have. It would just be overwhelming joy, overwhelming bliss that just would cascade through me, which was, yeah, that's what I want. That's why I did this. There'd be other experiences, though, where I'd be completely like, where am I? Who am I? I've lost my total sense of my identity. I don't know where I am. I could be this, I could be that. I'm just kind of floating with no direction, feeling really high. So learning the work of Stan Grof and learning some of the astrology has shown me that both of those experiences relate to the same archetype of Neptune, that feeling of unity and cosmic oneness, and also on the other side, that experience of being lost and deluded without an identity and not knowing where I was, which led me to this work, frankly. So there's two examples from my life of Neptune as well.
By contrast, the second perinatal matrix is associated with the difficult perinatal stage of uterine contractions when the cervix is still closed. BPM2 is typically expressed in experiences of claustrophobic constriction, images of imprisonment and hell, physical and emotional pain, helpless suffering and victimization, fear of dying, states of intense shame and guilt, depression and despair, feelings of no exit in Sartre's sense, existential alienation and meaninglessness, being trapped in a perspective in which all that exists is mortal life in a disenchanted material world with no deeper meaning or purpose. In this case, I noticed how often the planet Saturn was involved in transits that coincided with BPM2 states. And again, the set of symbolic meanings long attributed by the astrological tradition to the planet Saturn closely matched the BPM2 phenomenology: constraint, limitation, contraction, necessity, hard materiality, the pressures of time, the weight of the past, strict or oppressive authority, aging, death, the endings of things, judgment, guilt, trials, punishment, the tendency to restrict, hold back, burden, separate, negate and oppose, to experience difficulty, problems, decline, deprivation, defeat, loss, the labor of life, the workings of fate, karma, the consequences of past action, pessimism, melancholy, the dark, cold, heavy, dense, dry, old, slow. However, whereas in the three other cases, both positive and negative sides of the astrological principle involved seem to be expressed in the large range of potential experiences related to each perinatal matrix, in the case of BPM2, only the negative and problematic features of the Saturn archetype were evident. Subjects under the sway of the second perinatal matrix seem to experience everything through an encompassingly negative filter that allows no positive or redeeming dimension of life. Only in retrospect, after the perinatal process has unfolded and been, at least to some extent, resolved and integrated, does the experience of BPM-2 become seen in a different light with new meaning. The crushing defeat of the old identity or structure of reality is seen as making possible an enduring wisdom that has known both sides of life and that can embrace pain and loss as necessary for a deeper mode of being. The realities of aging and of mortality itself are seen in a new way, permitting the emergence of the positive qualities that are also traditionally associated with the Saturn archetype.
Saturn, limitation, frustration, constriction, can't move. The idea is we're in the womb and we're not going anywhere. Cervix is not open. We're just a body in a small enclosure, and we can't move, and we can't do anything except be ultra frustrated. That's the term I go to immediately. And then where does that frustration go? It doesn't go outside. It goes right back in, and we hold on to it. Later, we get born. We're alive. We have experiences that are similar. We get somewhere that we can't get through. We get frustrated somewhere, can't achieve what we want. Same type of experience, eh? That's BPM-2, Saturn. But later, you go through the ordeal and stay with it, okay? You gain some wisdom. You gain an experience that almost, in a way, kills you, that makes you very strong. It allows you to go forward and face things with a different attitude. So when we learn about Saturn in astrology and archetypal astrology, and we see both sides of the archetype, the painful, frustrating side, and then going through the ordeal, integrating it, becoming liberated through Saturn to achieve great work. Thank you. Well, how does one start with this system? You can take psychedelics, do the breath work, and have big experiences that you don't understand. You want to keep our mind open. You want to schedule a birth chart and transit reading to get more into what we're talking about. And then next, you want to learn about blending holotropic states with archetypal astrology on your own or take a course. And as you explore your chart and transits, you'll start to recognize universal principles highlighting your session experiences. So you can think about it with clarity, talk about it with clarity. Welcome to psychedelic integration. Keep going.
Yeah, excellent.
So there's
And
that.
to that, I'll add, that. So your birth chart, that's the astrological chart at your time of birth, which describes your life, kind of the arc of your life, themes of your life. And then there's something called transit chart, and that looking at what's called transits in astrology is a way of, as opposed to looking at your birth chart, which looks at the whole arc of your life, the whole kind of thematic growth arc of your life. Transits are a way of looking at a certain window of time in your life, like now through the next year, or something that happened 5 years ago or 2 years in the future, or whatever it is. Those are called transits. And as you go in this kind of sequence that's laid out here, it just keeps getting deeper and deeper because the archetypes are so rich and your birth chart is so rich. It just becomes a treasure trove that's kind of like gives the more you kind of dig into it, the more riches it gives, the more kind of like a font of insight it becomes. And, eventually we get to the point where we see that these archetypes are fundamental building blocks of reality and our experience as conscious beings. And it starts to bring us to a feeling of commonality with all people, in the sense that we're all individuals, yet the building blocks that compose our experience of reality are all the same. You know, like the ingredients are all the same. They might look a little different, but the basic fundamental ingredients are the same. To top it off, we're looking at the space outside, the celestial bodies in outer space, to understand inner space. So we also begin to come to a place where we realize that there's this fundamental nature of consciousness that actually transcends boundaries like inner, outer, self, and other. And so these are some of the riches that await you on this path. It's enormously gratifying. I mean, it's deeply fulfilling, and kind of the deepest sense of spiritual hunger of being a human being. So yeah, keep going.
Yeah.
So this summer, I'll be offering the Paradigm Shift Integration Circle, summer of 2023. The Paradigm Shift Integration Circle is an online group adventure in which you will receive a 2-hour one-on-one archetypal astrology reading, and so that you get to personally feel clarity click into space regarding the project of your life and where it's taking you. We've got 7 group calls in which all your questions will be answered regarding planning psychedelic assisted healing sessions, Stan Grof's expanded cartography of the psyche, how to read your own personal transits, how to understand how transits reflect the rhythm and themes of your psychospiritual growth path ahead.
Here's my offerings. You could schedule a birth chart and transit reading with me. You can learn archetypal astrology with your chart. Picture an Hourglass introductory course begins July 2023. You could take the Holotropic Psychedelic integration module starting August 2023. That's after Picture an Hourglass. It's 2 classes plus a personal transit reading. The Outer Planet Transits overview related to deep journeys. You grasp current outer planet transits. Explore previous psychedelic sessions. Select timings for current and future journeys at referenceastrology.com. Book online.
So thanks for joining us in episode 4 of the Psychedelic Holotropic Integration Podcast, where we have an integration process that's as fantastic as the journey itself. So next week, we're going to be looking at the archetypes of Pluto and the archetypes of Uranus. We're also going to be looking at a birth chart. We're going to be examining a birth chart, seeing what it looks like, seeing how to read a birth chart. We're going to be using as an example the chemist Albert Hofmann, who is the, you could say, father of LSD.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Looking forward to see you in a couple of weeks.